At 6:42 a.m., the sky cracked open with a roar that rattled windows and froze my coffee mid-air. A small plane screamed overhead, dipped hard, and vanished beyond the trees. Sirens followed. Phones lit up, and before the smoke had even thinned, my doorbell rang. It was Karen, arms crossed, camera rolling, already accusing me of causing a plane crash. She said my backyard workshop interfered with navigation, that my antennas pulled the aircraft down, that I was reckless and dangerous. The accusation felt absurd, but the certainty in her voice was terrifying. In our quiet neighborhood, truth doesn't always arrive first. Noise does. I'm not a pilot. I don't own an airstrip. I don't even fly drones. What I do have is a habit of fixing things, a shed full of tools, and a neighbor who believes outrage is evidence. Karen had called 911, the HOA, and anyone who would listen. By noon, a rumor hardened into a verdict. I caused it. She told neighbors to stay inside. She told the news tip line. She told the police I'd been warned before. None of that was true. When officers arrived, they were calm but cautious. They asked about radios, transmitters, anything that could interfere with aircraft. Karen hovered, narrating every breath like a documentary villain monologue. I answered honestly, showed permits, explained what my equipment actually did. Still, the weight of suspicion pressed down. A plane had gone down miles away. Someone wanted a simple explanation. I was convenient. That afternoon, the FAA called. Not to accuse, but to investigate. The difference mattered. They asked for timelines, frequencies, serial numbers, logs. They asked about Karen's claims, then quietly asked why she sounded so certain. An investigator said something I won't forget. Accidents are loud, but causes are patient. They don't shout. They measure. As the sun set, Karen posted online. Screenshots spread. Comments sharpened. My name trended locally for all the wrong reasons. I shut the door and waited. Because when facts finally arrive, they don't knock. They kick. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I replayed the roar, the ring, the certainty. I checked documents, saved receipts, backed up files. I called a lawyer friend who said stay calm and stay factual. Outside, patrol lights flickered once, then disappeared. Somewhere, a pilot's family waited for answers. Somewhere else, Karen refreshed her feed. Between those places sat a truth still forming, assembling itself from data, not drama. The investigation had begun, and with it, a slow-turning tide I couldn't yet see. By morning, everyone would have opinions, but only one process would have evidence, and it was moving quietly, methodically, toward an answer that would change everything. By the next morning, the neighborhood felt different, like a crime scene that forgot to put the tape away. Curtains twitched. Conversations stopped when I walked past. Karen stood in her driveway. Phone raised, narrating again, this time about ongoing federal interest. She spoke like a spokesperson, not a witness. Meanwhile, the FAA investigators arrived without sirens or spectacle. 2 cars, plane jackets, clipboards. They didn't look at Karen first. They looked at the sky. They started with the crash site miles away, then traced backward through radar data, radio logs and maintenance records. They asked me to walk them through my equipment inch by inch. What frequency? What power? What purpose? I explained patiently, pointing to labels, manuals, and permits. One investigator nodded. Another photographed serial numbers. They asked when I last powered anything on. I showed timestamps. Karen interrupted twice, insisting my unlicensed signals were obvious. The lead investigator raised a hand. We'll ask the questions, he said, gently but firmly. That afternoon, they canvassed neighbors. Karen followed, inserting herself into every exchange, adding context that didn't exist. She mentioned past disagreements, noise complaints, patterns of behavior. The investigators wrote it all down without reacting. That unnerved her. She wanted confrontation. She got silence. Then came the data. FAA analysts pulled ADS-B tracks, weather reports, and maintenance logs from the aircraft. Wind shear spiked unexpectedly. The plane's altitude fluctuated before the descent. There was a known issue with the pitot static system on that model. One addressed by a service bulletin the owner hadn't completed. None of this fit Karen's theory. Interference would leave fingerprints, distorted signals, anomalies across receivers, corroboration. There were none. Karen pivoted. She suggested sabotage. She suggested experimental tech. She suggested cover-ups. Each suggestion arrived louder than the last, and each was met with the same calm response. Evidence, please. When asked to provide proof, she offered screenshots of posts she'd made herself. On day 3, the investigators requested HOA records, complaints, fines, correspondence, patterns. Emerged, not about me, but about Karen. Repeated escalations, exaggerations, claims disproven by inspections. A habit of certainty without substance. The file thickened. I watched from my porch as the tone shifted. Questions aimed at me slowed. Questions aimed at Karen sharpened. She noticed too. Her videos became defensive, then angry. She accused the FAA of bias. She threatened reporters with lawsuits. She told neighbors the truth was being buried. But truth doesn't bury itself, it waits. Late that evening, an investigator returned alone. He said they were close. He said the findings would be public. He said I'd want to be present when they spoke to Karen. I asked why. He paused, then said, "Because accusations have consequences, and accountability needs witnesses." The meeting happened in Karen's driveway, right where she had filmed her first accusation. Same place, different energy. The FAA investigator stood beside a quiet sedan, papers in hand, voice even. Neighbors gathered at a distance, pretending to water lawns. Karen arrived confident, phone already recording, ready for her moment. She didn't notice that no one else had a camera. The investigator began with the facts. Weather conditions at the time of the incident. Wind shear confirmed by multiple stations. Radar data showing instability well before the aircraft passed anywhere near our neighborhood. Maintenance records indicating a missed service. Bulletin related to airspeed readings. Each sentence landed softly but firmly like a gavel wrapped in cloth. Karen tried to interrupt. He didn't stop speaking. Then came the part about interference. The investigator explained what it would take to affect an aircraft. Power levels, frequencies, proximity, corroboration across receivers. He stated plainly that none of those indicators were present. Zero anomalies. Zero signal distortion. Zero evidence. My equipment, he said, was compliant, documented, and inactive at the relevant times. He turned slightly and nodded to me. Not approval, just confirmation. Karen's smile flickered. She shifted tactics, asking why they'd even looked at her claims, if they were so impossible. The investigator answered without heat, because accusations require verification, and because public safety demands certainty. He added that false reports divert resources from real risks. The neighbors leaned in. Then he addressed her history, prior complaints, prior investigations, patterns of escalation. He didn't accuse her of malice. He said something worse, that her certainty had repeatedly outpaced her evidence. That this time, the consequences reached federal attention. He informed her that knowingly spreading false claims tied to an aviation incident could carry penalties. He advised her to stop posting immediately. Karen's phone lowered. Her voice rose. She accused everyone of ganging up on her, of silencing a concerned citizen. The investigator listened, then handed her a card and said all further communication should go through counsel. He turned to me and asked if I had anything to add. I didn't. Silence felt heavier than rebuttal. By evening, the FAA released a preliminary statement. Cause: weather-related loss of control compounded by maintenance non-compliance. No evidence of external interference. No public safety threat from neighborhood equipment. Local news updated their stories. Comments shifted. Apologies appeared quietly, privately. Karen's posts vanished one by one. The next day, the HOA emailed. They rescinded notices, apologized for acting on unverified claims, and promised revised procedures. It wasn't justice. It was repair. Meanwhile, Karen avoided eye contact, then avoided the street entirely. Her certainty had evaporated, leaving behind a paper trail and a lesson she never wanted. The investigator checked in once more. He said the final report would take weeks, but the conclusion wouldn't change. He said truth travels slower than rumor, but it arrives with receipts. As he drove away, the sky cleared, blue and ordinary again. The roar was gone. The waiting was over. What remained was aftermath and accountability. Weeks later, the final FAA report dropped quietly, like a door closing instead of a bomb going off. No press conference, no drama. Just pages of data, diagrams, and conclusions that matched what we already knew. Weather instability, maintenance failure, human limits. My name appeared once, in a footnote clearing any involvement. Karen's appeared more often, attached to appendices, documenting false claims and repeated interference with the investigation. The truth didn't shout, it documented. Life began to normalize. Neighbors waved again. Conversations restarted. Someone brought cookies and said they were sorry for believing things they read online. I accepted, because grudges are heavy, and evidence had already done the work. The HOA implemented new policies requiring verification before action. A small change, but a meaningful one. Systems matter, especially when people get loud. Karen resurfaced, briefly with a post about being misunderstood, but it didn't land. Without momentum, outrage collapses. Her audience moved on. The comments were skeptical. The certainty was gone. Eventually, so was she. House listed, driveway empty, camera silent. I didn't celebrate. I reflected. Accusations feel powerful because they simplify complex events into villains. But reality is complex, and complexity resists shortcuts. The pilot's family released a statement thanking investigators for clarity. They spoke about closure, about focusing on safety improvements instead of blame. Reading it reframed everything. This was never entertainment. It was someone's life, someone's loss. Facts honored that. Rumors did not. I returned to my workshop, turned tools back on, fixed a neighbor's bike. The sky roared once more as planes passed overhead. Indifferent to our drama, faithful to physics, I felt calmer hearing them. Understanding replaces fear when information replaces noise. What stuck with me most was the investigator's earlier line. Accidents are patient, causes assemble quietly. That's true beyond aviation. In communities and conflicts and online storms, the loudest voice isn't the truest. The fastest story isn't the right one. Evidence takes time. It asks questions. It waits. If there's a lesson here, it's not about Karen. It's about restraint. About asking for proof before sharing outrage. About remembering that real investigations don't happen on social feeds. They happen in logs, records, and careful steps forward. When we skip that process, we risk becoming the noise we claim to fear. The final email from the FAA thanked me for cooperation and patience. I replied with thanks for professionalism. Then I closed the thread and went outside. The street was quiet, ordinary, earned. If this unbelievable HOA drama shocked you, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life Karen stories, and leave a comment below telling me what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Let's see whose side you're really on.